If you've been scrolling through a handful of wet tile saws, watching endless comparison videos, and still feel like you're staring at a wall of numbers, you're not alone. The biggest fear is ending up with a machine that either can't handle the big slabs you need, or that turns every simple cut into a headache. That's why today's rundown is all about cutting through the noise and figuring out whether the DEWALT D36000 actually earns its place on a job site. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first started looking at wet saws, the things that kept me up at night weren't just the motor horsepower. It was the practical day-to-day grind, dragging a heavy tool through a crowded job site, trying to keep a clean water line, and making sure each cut lines up perfectly with the next tile. A saw that looks great on a spec sheet can still be a nightmare if the rollers wobble or the cutting guide drifts after a few minutes of use. That's the real risk you're trying to avoid, spending a solid investment on a tool that adds more steps than it saves. In the tile cutting world, capacity and stability are the two pillars that separate the decent from the dependable. A 37-inch rip capacity means you can take a full-size floor tile and slice it down the middle without having to shim the blade or make awkward adjustments. Crosscut ability of 8 inches lets you handle typical 6-inch baseboard or 8-inch by 48-inch wall panels without a second saw. Those dimensions are the sweet spot for most residential remodels, where you're often working with large porcelain slabs or marble pieces that need to be trimmed to fit doorways, vanity tops, or irregular room shapes. The DEWALT D36000 brings those numbers together in a single frame that feels built for the grind. Its rigid steel structure holds the blade steady, so even after a half hour of continuous cutting, the line of cut stays true. The cut line indicator is a small but handy visual cue. You can line up the tile and see exactly where the blade will engage, which saves a lot of guesswork when you're working under tight tolerances. Stainless steel rollers glide across the base, reducing friction and keeping the sled moving smoothly, something I've noticed makes a real difference when you're pushing a heavy slab across a water-filled tray. The 15-amp motor delivers 1220 watts of output, giving you enough torque to slice through dense porcelain without bogging down, and the water tray itself fully contains the splash, keeping the work area cleaner and the blade cooler. Let's picture a real job, a kitchen renovation where the client wants a seamless, full bleed stone countertop. You've got 324 by 24-inch slabs that need to be trimmed down to a precise 18-inch width to fit the island. With a saw that only offers a 30-inch rip, you'd be forced to make multiple cuts or resort to a handsaw for the final trim. The D36000's 37-inch rip lets you take the slab from edge to edge in one go, and the cut line indicator ensures you hit that 18-inch mark on the first pass. Because the motor holds steady under load, you won't see the blade stall halfway and ruin the edge. The water tray captures the slurry, so you don't spend extra time mopping up or worrying about dust inhalation, an especially nice benefit on a residential site where the client's home stays partially occupied. That said, the machine isn't a magic wand. For everyday use, the biggest question is not just whether DEWALT wet tile saw, high capacity, D36000, has impressive specs, but whether those specs match the way you actually plan to use it. In the default_tech category, buyers should compare the headline features against their daily routine, setup space, compatibility needs, and how often they will use the product after the first week. The strongest reasons to consider it are tied to these verified details. Cut line indicator, rigid frame, and stainless steel rollers provide cutting ACC, 37 inches. Rip cut capacity, 41 inches. With plunge, and 18 inches. Cutting clearance left, 8.5 inches. Crosscut capacity is ideal for cutting 6 inches. Sills and 8 inches. X 48 inches. 91 pounds for portability to and from the job site. Those points matter because they affect the real buying decision after the excitement of the product page is gone. If those are the exact things you need, this becomes a much easier product to justify.